So we're live. Yeah.
Are we all good?
So you can begin anytime.
Blend. So once again, thanks to Franklin Township and Paul Lagasse. Did I say that correctly, Paul?
It's good.
I apologize for that, but he is a member of the Franklin Township Historical Commission and has been a significant contributor to this project throughout, along with the rest of our wonderful task force. So thank you for joining us on this Thursday, July afternoon. It is hot out. But at least it's not storming. So I'm going to dive right into it. This is the Mason-Dixon Arc Corner Heritage Interpretation and Connectivity Plan. Still working on a shorter form of that, but we call it MD-HIP for short. Unfortunately, that cuts out Arc Corner. But this is a draft review. So we've been working over the past 2 years to pull together a draft of this plan to submit to townships for acceptance. So the agenda for this evening was welcome, project overview. Then I'm going to run through the highlights of the draft plan. It is an 80-page document. That's the main report. And then our appendix goes significantly longer than that to include site assessments, as well as another way to organize some of the material. Questions from you all will be up next, and then I'll have next steps about how you can review the draft plan. So our planning team, I'm Beth Burns. I'm from the Brandywine Conservancy. I'm a lead planner. I've been the lead on this project for the past couple of years. Sarah Sharp's in the back corner over there, and she's been assisting me. She's the assistant manager for the Municipal Assistance Program. Heritage Strategies has been one of our sub-consultants, and Heather Reifer is in the room tonight, so thank you for joining us. Peter Benton has also been a big portion of this project, and then Miller Design Works has been providing some guidance on interpretive material and media, as well as some conceptual designs. So Scott Sheridan's not joining us this evening, but he's been integral to this work. This project is funded in part by the Vision Partnership Program. So we have a lovely Chester County Planning Commission monitor, Janine Spears, whose input and advice has been very invaluable to this plan as well. And then the main project task force has been the guide for developing this plan, and that we have a significant amount of the task force in this room tonight, so thank you all for joining. I look forward to talking with you after. But our project task force is made up of members from London Britton Township, Franklin Township, New Garden Township, and Elk Township. I'm not going to run through everyone's names, so don't hate me. Quick project overview. So the study area is 4 partner municipalities. It's comprised of New Garden, London Britton, Franklin, and Elk. They sit along the Mason-Dixon line to the south, and then the Arc boundary line, which is the boundary between Delaware and Pennsylvania, to the east. Site identification was one of our one of the requirements of our scope of work is identifying sites that would be able to tell the stories of this region. So we spent some time at the very beginning identifying what sites would be great for interpreting and connecting throughout this plan. So I just pulled some 4 sites from the townships, but that is by no means all of them. We really talked about it and really considered thinking about public accessibility, when they would be open, and how well they tie thematically to what we've discussed. So on the slideshow, I've got the Lyceum Building in New Garden Township Park, the Sexton's House in White Lake Creek Preserve, Old Stone Cemetery over in Elk, and Kimballsville, which we are currently in. Another big aspect of this project and identifying themes. So and this kind of went in tandem with site identification. And as the name of the plan kind of suggests, 2 of our main themes were already kind of identified, and that is the Mason-Dixon story, the Mason-Dixon line story, as well as the Arc boundary storyline. But we also wanted to expand upon that because obviously these townships have more that they can talk about with local heritage and history. So we also identified 2 other themes, agricultural landscapes and the natural landscape. And in this theme identification, we are also trying to work within some of the plans that Chester County, the Heritage Interpretation Network, had identified. Mason-Dixon storyline is one of the unique ones, obviously, because it is very site-based to the southern part of the state as well as the arc boundary. Another portion of our scope was kind of identifying what interpretive media would work at these sites and how we could tell these stories to people who are coming to visit. So on the slide, I've just given an example of how one aspect of the Mason-Dixon line has been interpreted to the west. It's in the Cumberland Gap. It's a cycling trail, so they have figured out a way to interpret the crossing of the Mason-Dixon line there. So we're just using that as an example. But what other interpretive media can we use in this region? The middle image is of the Lyceum, the new Garden Township Park in the Lyceum building. So they already have some existing interpretive media framework there. And then the other example is a digital interpretive media, and that is at the Marshallton Heritage Center, which is in Marshallton, up in Chester County, a little further north in Chester County. So identifying the best ways to kind of convey this information to visitors and residents who might be coming to these sites to learn a little bit more. So we worked through some of those, how that would best be presented. One aspect of the scope of work that we did not do, and that will be for later planning, is interpretive content. So we didn't really look at the history and what exactly would be told at these sites. That will be developed at another stage. But we're laying the groundwork for the sites that will be interpreted moving forward, or at least some of them. And then, as the name of the plan suggests, we also did connectivity. In this region, there's not as many places that provide readily pedestrian access between sites, since they're a little bit further afield. Mason-Dixon mile markers are about a mile apiece. Well, they are a mile apiece. They're not about a mile apiece. And arc corner boundary monuments are half miles apart. So they're not readily conducive, except for in areas where there are already existing hiking trails for people to walk to. So we were trying to think of ways that people could come to these sites who may not have the accessibility to hike and visit these sites. So we thought of possible driving tours as something that could be further developed moving on after this process. And I show here a Mason-Dixon driving tour, which starts at the Sexton's house in White Lake Creek and then drives past mile marker 1 to Mason-Dixon Greenway South in London Britton Township over to Elk Township and the Mason-Dixon line over there. We've also identified some trail connections. There are some areas where I know townships and our task force were interested in making a little bit more trail connections. I show the one in London Britton here, where the hope is to eventually connect the Mason-Dixon Greenway South, which connects down to Fair Hill, up to White Clay Creek Preserve, so making that a pedestrian accessible area. In developing this plan, we looked at a couple models. So the Brandywine Battlefield Heritage Interpretation and Connectivity Plan was developed in 2022. It kind of further explores some of the concepts developed earlier around the Brandywine Battlefield, and also expands on the Heritage Interpretation Network that Chester County has developed, in which you have gateways, heritage centers, interpretive sites, and viewing corridors. So we took that concept and we included it in the Mason-Dixon and Arc Corner Heritage Interpretation Plan so that it'll connect in with the rest of the county as that's further developed. I mentioned the Marshallton Heritage Center in an earlier slide. We've included that here. That's about the size of what a heritage center could be, a little smaller, but it has amenities. And then the Kennett Heritage Center in Kennett Square, and showcasing some of the interpretive media they have inside. Throughout this process, we've had pretty robust engagement. We've had 9 task force meetings in which a lot of our task force provided some great opinions and advice about how to move forward with the plan. We've done 3 public outreach events and meetings. This is the 3rd one. So our first one was about a year ago when we introduced the plan. And then we attended the White Clay Creek Preserve 40th anniversary last October and tabled there to explain what we were doing. We've also done multiple key person interviews and multiple property owner or representative meetings throughout this process to inform how this plan developed. Now to get into the meat of the material, the draft plan and its highlights. So I'm going to go roughly chapter by chapter, but I'm not going to try to bog us down with too much material. So in the introduction, we essentially cover everything that I just talked to you about. We talk about the study area, the scope, the goals and purposes of the plan, and how it came about, and then just a general introduction to the region. In chapter 2, we delve more into the interpretive and thematic framework. So this covers the Heritage Interpretation Network, which I've already briefly mentioned to you, which is the Chester County Plan, and how we have gateways, heritage centers, interpretive sites, and viewing corridors. Gateways are outside the scope of this plan, so we really focused on heritage centers as the primary component for people to come into this region or residents to go and get a little bit more robust material about the region's history and the Mason-Dixon line and the arc boundary. And then from there, they can go to interpretive sites that'll have slightly less information, but will be more tailored to the site-specific location. It also briefly mentions the Chester County Heritage Tourism Plan, which has been adopted at the county level. And so one that we're also working to help guide this plan. And then it talks about thematic framework, the Mason-Dixon line, the arc boundary, agricultural landscape, and natural landscape. And it also discusses some existing interpretation that might already exist in the area. A lot of the historical commissions, a lot of you all have done a lot of great work interpreting some of these sites already. And so we're here to just kind of bolster that and help you get that out to more of the residents. So that's been great. And then there are some existing interpretation outside of this region that already exists, specifically related to the Mason-Dixon line. So you have the Stargazer Stone that's located in Cheslin Preserve. They have a small interpretive wayside. And then in Delaware, in White Clay Creek State Park, they have an interpretive wayside that talks about the postmarked west. So there's already a lot of, well, there's some robust material about the Mason-Dixon line, but there's plenty of room for more, which is what we're hoping this plan will help guide moving forward. So the Mason-Dixon Heritage Center and Interpretive Sites, this was something that we discussed for a while, and what would be a good place for the Mason-Dixon story to be told. It's really hard to tell it on the line as it's not always publicly accessible, or there are not places that have the amenities like parking or restrooms that might be needed at a heritage center. So we developed this map of just some sites that can be further expanded as this plan moves forward, but this is what we considered the core 4 plus the Heritage Center. So we were looking at the Sexton's House in White Clay Creek Preserve. It's currently underutilized, not utilized much at all except for some storage. We had some preliminary conversations with the site manager at the time and the Friends of the White Clay Creek Preserve walked through it with us to see if it would be a feasible option. Obviously, a lot of conversation and would need to be done moving forward with this and compliance and discussion with DCNR. We also looked at the Mason-Dixon Greenway South, which is a really great site in London, Britain, that has a trail down to a road where you can walk right past mile marker 1, which is an amazing bit of history from the 1700s. So that's another great site to be utilized and explored for interpretation. And in Elk Township, we have Old Stone Cider, Old Stone Cemetery, and the Elk Township Building. So this is the interior of the Sexton's house. If you've never seen it, you've got a glimpse now. And Scott Sheridan from Miller Design Works provided some interpretive concepts for us and what the front room could look like moving forward down the line. And so he presents a mural along the wall with more information, and then a 3D rendering of the Mason-Dixon mile marker, which is really cool. It's a virtual concept where you can spin it and look at it all sides, and then a map along the wall. So we developed these high-level concept just to provide some input and direction as we move forward with this plan. This chapter also includes information on the White Clay Creek Preserve. It is perhaps one of the only fully walkable pedestrian areas in this in the study area. So we wanted to highlight it as a possibility for being a robust area for interpretation, because you can walk between the sites and kind of get a feel for the size and the layout of this area. And so the themes here don't always tie to Mason-Dixon, but they tie to agriculture and the natural landscape. In chapter 4, we touch on New Garden Township Park, a heritage center there, and Arc Corner interpretive sites. So we were looking at New Garden Township Park to be one of the heritage centers that might more focus on the regional history, but also have some material about the Arc Corner. So as when people are there to learn more about New Garden Township, will also be introduced to Arc Boundary and the Arc Corner. And from there, they might be able to explore further down into London Britton Township, into White Clay Creek Preserve and White Clay Creek State Park. So on this map, we have the Lyceum Building and New Garden Township Park, as well as Arc Corner 1 mile marker, which is located in White Clay Creek Preserve, White Clay Creek State Park, right on the boundary there, but you can access it, which is great. And then the Arc Corner Monument, which is also accessible by trail. And Miller Design Works also provided us kind of a high-level concept of what could go in at New Garden Township Park, and then provided also examples of images of what else could be used for interpretation at the park if one image is too robust or they want to grow up to it. But New Garden Township Park also has excellent interpretive outriggings already, so they have a great option to move forward. Chapter 5 moves into our agricultural landscape interpretive sites. And so from here, we have quite a few across all 4 townships to look at, and it really just touches on some of the agricultural themes, local heritage, mills, religious diversity in the area, the Friends Meeting House and some other churches, as well as some trails around working farms down here in Franklin. And then in Landenberg, some of the mill sites as well. So it kind of touches on all realms of agriculture. And another recommendation for this section is to work with the neighbors over in the Oxford region who have been working really hard at they have been focusing on the agricultural theme. And so tying that in, and I know Elk Township has also done some interpretation around Mason-Dixon and the agricultural theme through the work done in Oxford region. So it's a great opportunity to mesh and work together, and it kind of expands this network across regions. And we also have the natural landscape interpretive sites. So these also, we have less, not that they aren't plenty, because there are a lot, but this wasn't a major focus of ours, but we did want to highlight it because there is a wealth of natural history in this region. So we looked at preserves and parks in Franklin and Elk, especially with the Chrome Barrens on the western end of Elk, including that in. But that could be a robust site. One of our recommendations is working with the other serpentine barrens in the region and expanding that, and then also pulling in Mason-Dixon Greenway South to kind of pull in all of the sites across the board. Connectivity, also in the name of the plan. So we included that as a chapter. And this one kind of focuses, as I've already mentioned, on the driving tours and trail connections. So we have at least, I think we have 3 driving tours that we highlight as possible to develop further, as well as 3 or 4 trail connections, one in London Britton, New Garden, Old Stone Cider to one of the Mason-Dixon mile markers. So those are all included in this plan as well. Scott Sheridan from Miller Design Works did some great branding exercises. So these are just examples of what could be, or the direction if used in the direction moving forward. We talked about how branding is an important way to make a region feel more as one and inclusive. And so that when you go from site to site, you know exactly how it connects in and where it connects in and who's done the work. So we pulled together a couple of possible branding identities, which we discussed at length at our task force meetings as well. But give good examples of how you can move forward in making sure that this region is connected visually as well as through the interpretive material that we have. In the final chapter of the plan, we discuss implementation. And so this chapter provides recommendations to the townships. We provide a general overview of recommendations that all townships working together or at some way want to do at a regional scale. And then we provide individual township recommendation pages so that as townships need to develop things slowly over time, they can pull directly from these recommendations for the sites that are already in their townships, but still with the idea that this is going to be a regionally connected plan. So I think I went through that relatively fast, and I know it's a lot of information, but if anybody has any questions, I believe Paul said we have to move over there, but I'd be happy to entertain them.
Okay, so can I ask you to take down the slideshow so that you could expand the
Yes. Do you want me to stop sharing?
yeah, we can, that's fine. It's actually so let me see if I can we sort of see that. So if anybody, I'm going to ask you to say this so they can be heard online. If anybody online wants to ask a question, I'd ask that they raise their hand so they can see it and have them in. But yes, as I mentioned before, if anybody here wishes to ask a question, we have a table over there with a microphone. Microphone, you just need to press, what is it, the right hand button?
Yes, the one that has the person on it.
Press the right hand button so that it will turn the microphone to speak.
Okay, and then I'll tell the
online and as well as for the YouTube audience.
Okay, so for anybody online, if you guys are interested in asking a question, please just raise your hand on the Zoom and we will get to you. And then if you all heard, but over here, if you'd like to ask a question, just hit the right hand button so that we can hear you. And we have a question.
I don't have so much a question as to provide you some information you might or may not know about. Do you know about the wayside that's going to go with the Arc Corner Monument in Delaware?
I believe the task force has mentioned that at some point, but it's been a more recent development that we've heard, maybe.
Yes, I've seen the rough draft.
Okay.
I've been involved in that and editing the board and making comments about that. So I know it's in progress. I don't know where they are. I thought they were getting pretty close to finalizing what the project was going to be.
Okay, and that's in Whiteley Creek State Park side of things?
Yes.
Okay, so that's great. I can make a note in the plan that that's something that will be implemented relatively soon in the timeline of things, as well as to be referenced in developing our interpretation. But that's really great, so thank you for bringing that forward.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, please come on up. Yes, the right hand button, please.
My name is Bill Hutchings. I live around here and I'm just making a statement. You can park your car at a parking lot on Elbow Lane that is in Fair Hill. It's a fee parking lot. And you could, no, there's a thing. And you can walk down to the first mile marker. Then you can cross the bridge. You can find the second and the third mile marker. Then you can cross the creek and find the fourth mile marker, all in the space of 4 miles.
Yeah.
So you also can go to Crownstone Feed, which is a feed store in just west of Louisville. And the reason it's called Crownstone Feed is because the 5 mile marker is right behind the store.
Oh, wow.
You had a picture of it here before.
Yes, the
And,
Crownstone.
the woman that runs the feed store is very friendly. Her name is Claire. And the guy that owns the land doesn't mind people walking back to look at the stone.
That's great.
So-
Thank you for that. It's one of the exceptional parts of this region is that 4 mile markers are technically on public lands, and so that they are, in all aspects, accessible to people. I know Big Elk Creek State Park or in Fair Hill. I'm not quite sure what the trails look like getting to mile markers 2, 3, and 4, because those are all on in between both. Yes, there are no trails. Hayfield. So in looking at that, we also wanted to consider accessibility. So we didn't want to include too many private properties without discussing that with them. But that is good to know about the Crownstone. Mary Gruber, one of our task force members, got us, Sarah and I, asked us to get on that property. So it was great to see the Crownstone. And so we're also hoping we're including a section for trail connectivity from Old Stone Cider to mile marker 4, hopefully, just including that in the plan as a possibility. Anyone else? Oh, why wasn't Maryland so the question was, why wasn't Maryland included in any of this? Yeah, so that's a good point. Why? And we reached out to Fair Hill. I reached out to Fair Hill a few times and just never had a chance to connect with them, which happens sometimes. But it is an opportunity moving forward. It is something we can include in the recommendations moving forward, that connection, especially with those essentially 3 mile markers being buffered by public lands, is an opportunity moving forward for the townships to kind of progress that conversation. So that's a really great point. Anyone else? I've talked about this plan at length, so I'm happy to feed questions. I know it was a lot of information, but I don't have to pull my slides back up. I don't know if there was anybody online, Paul.
It's on. Thanks. Rather than disrupt my walk around, have you taken a look at the possibility of cooperating or collaborating with the existing Mason-Dixon trail system?
The Mason-Dixon trail that goes from Upton Pennsbury down and then all the way across. Yeah. We didn't collaborate with them on this plan, which might have been a missed opportunity, but definitely one moving forward. But it's definitely one that we can think about and include in the recommendations or in the connectivity section, because the Mason-Dixon Trail does go through this area and then goes up to, as far as I know it, into Lancaster and from there on out.
Well, it starts, I believe, out by the river and runs all the way through to the White Clay Creek preserves. It stops up in Chad's Ford. Yeah.
In Pennsbury, yeah.
Next to, I think, the Horseshoe Trail, further west. You know more about it than I do.
Well, that would be a great recommendation for our connectivity section, is to include the Mason-Dixon Trail system in that.
Yeah, if I can just jump in here. So I'm not on the screen. Anyway, I'm Paul Lagasse with the Historical Commission. Some of you I've introduced myself to already. One of the problems with that trail is, at least locally, it doesn't go to any of the Mason-Dixon markers. So while it carries the Mason-Dixon name.
To the tri-state marker.
Yeah, it goes to the tri-state marker, but that's it. It doesn't really, it kind of just passes through this. We can talk about that. I have a lot of ideas about that. But you're right, it goes to the one, but it in terms of the markers that were actually placed by Mason and Dixon, it does not go to any of those. The tri-state marker was not placed by Mason and Dixon.
That's right. It was never intended to follow mark.
Right.
It goes back and forth between Delaware and Maryland.
Right. So in terms of what we're trying to do locally, it's something of a fit for two of the townships, but when you get down to the Mason-Dixon line where the publicly available markers that were set by Mason-Dixon are, it doesn't go to those, unfortunately.
Sorry, the tri-state record, it's the same trail as in the White Clay Creek Reserve.
Exactly.
How many shares?
Yes. And so just for everyone on Zoom, it mentioned the tri-state marker being in the trail system in the White Clay Creek Preserve. And so it's been included in our plan, the tri-state marker, in connection with our corner monument, because they come off the same trail system. So the Art Corner Monument, if you come down Art Corner Road and at that trailhead, you can walk straight down, or the tri-state marker trail crosses, and you can do a longer hike if you wish to go see the tri-state marker. So we would propose including interpretation kind of under that at the Arc Boundary Trailhead, Arc Corner Road Trailhead. But yes, it's been a very robust learning experience on my end about all the Mason-Dixon, and I still am getting it wrong. I'm sorry, Paul.
No. I'm not saying you're getting it wrong. I'm just that one of the problems for us with the Mason-Dixon Trail, which is a very nice and extensive trail, it goes all the way over to the Susquehanna, is that it doesn't connect well with our local Mason-Dixon markers.
Yep. Anyone else? This is going to be a relatively short meeting. Otherwise, I should have talked slower.
Next steps.
Next steps.
Okay,
Let me-
go back to Sherry.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Questions. So for next steps, I have, I think, a glossary to add of terms that are related to the Mason-Dixon arc boundary storyline, so that it kind of helps people move forward. Otherwise, I'm going to give it to our marketing department at the Brandywine to upload to the website. So that will be available on the Brandywine website on Monday. I will provide the link to townships to publicize that as well. And I also have a sign-in sheet over here. If you would like to provide your email, I am happy to email you the plan as well, but it will be publicly accessible next week. And those are the next steps. Or if you have any further thoughts, comments, questions, concerns, anything you want to talk to me about Mason-Dixon Arc Boundary, my email is eburns@brandywine.org. I also have a couple of business cards with my email if you would like those. So just come find me after the meeting. I'm happy to discuss further. But those are my next steps, and a big thank you for everyone who's worked on this plan. It's been a long time coming to this point, and I think we have as a really great first step in the interpretation of this region. Yes.
The preparation of the physical displays, the status of that.
So the question for that was preparation of physical displays. So that's not part of our plan. So implementation, we've provided the recommendations and how to get to that stage. But that will be up on the townships. One of our recommendations was either creating a friends group for the Mason-Dixon Arc Corner region, or even just a joint meeting of the historical commissions and these four townships to kind of progress this forward. The Oxford region has done a great job in kind of implementing, and I believe they fabricated, but I'm not sure they've installed yet, a couple, I think 4 interpretive waysides for their region. So they're also a good partner to look to and ask questions and moving forward in that direction as well. But the next steps after this plan is taking these sites that we've recommended and taking the next steps that we've thought through and essentially developing content for these sites and then fabricating that content into waysides, interpretive materials, and then installing, which it's easier said than done, always is. But you're at the stage now where your sites are identified and thoroughly explored, so you can take this plan and run with it. Hi, welcome. I hate to break it to you, but you have come at the end of the meeting. But you don't have to leave if you want to ask questions.
7:30 meeting here tonight
Oh, 6:30. Is there a 7:30 meeting here tonight, Paul?
about the Mason Dixon line.
It was 6:30. You guys want to stay? I'm happy to answer questions at the end. Or, well, we're here, but I'm happy to answer questions after we're done. So I just want to thank you all for coming and for being a part. Oh,
I do have a question.
yes.
Do you have a general idea of what the total cost to execute this entire project is going to cost the townships?
So we have cost estimates. We've included one for the Sexton's house specifically, but then we've also included cost estimates for individual markers. So we haven't done the full tally because it depends on how much you want to implement at once. We've created
Well,
a lot of robust options. So it would be like in the 100,000s if you were to take this plan and implement it fully as is right now. But the idea is to do it in phases. So the implementation section has short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals so that it can be spread out over time. But interpretive waysides, you want to get quality ones because they last longer and they don't require quite as much maintenance. So they can range anywhere from the upper 700s to 2,500, depending if it's the low wayside or the upright waysides. So we've included in the appendix, we've included images of all the interpretive panels and waysides that you can have as well as a cost estimate associated with that.
thank you.
You're welcome. That was a great question because I did not mention the cost.
Pennsylvania, Park. Of course, they have the same.
Mhm. So the question was if we'd worked with the Pennsylvania DCNR, Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, Big Elk Creek State Park in particular. We didn't focus on Big Elk Creek State Park in this plan, but we did talk to DCNR representatives, especially as it regarded the White Clay Creek Preserve, because we wanted to look at the Sexton's house, and it was a non-starter if we didn't even open those conversations. So we recognize that there's a lot of back and forth and a lot of feelings in the air around Big Elk Creek State Park. So, and we recognize that there are 3 mile markers within it. And so hopefully that can be something that's discussed further down the line.
Seems to me there needs to be some opportunity for people to actually experience the line, to see the stones and all that kind of stuff. You're at different sites, it seems so removed.
Yes, and so the comment was the site seems so removed, which was an interesting thing to work with in this area, was sites that are a little bit more removed or require driving, because ideally, I love walking between sites and it is a great way to learn about things. So we've tried to implement sites like Old Stone Cider or Mason-Dixon Greenway with the mile marker 1. That could be ways to walk and kind of experience the line in shorter bursts. But yeah. Oh, so you're like way ahead of the curve. You just want an easier trail now. Excellent. Well, happy to field questions once we wrap up. So, and please come say hi and sign in if you would like the link to the plan. So thank you guys for coming. Yeah.